Well, joining us right now to discuss all this is Republican strategist Ford O'Connell. Ford, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me on, gentlemen.
Ford, your challenge, of course, as you consult and deal with a variety of GOP candidates, is to take a look at opportunities. And admittedly, retirements can be a mixed blessing because, on one hand, someone leaving tries to promote a good feeling of continuity within the district, even in a caretaker role, and it also gives a chance for new blood to come in here. But does this modify somewhat the Democrats' concern about big losses? Are some of these seats vulnerable enough for Democrats to actually take over those seats?
Well, overall, I think that the Democrats are really barking up the wrong tree. The reason why it's a good time to pass the torch, if you will, in 2014 in some of these swing seats is the political trade winds are really in the Republicans' favor. And what happens is if they can actually win these seats in 2014, if they're retiring from, the deal is, as you know, JD, incumbents win re-election 90% of the time, so you're actually much more fortified in 2016 when it's a very different electorate, a much bigger electorate, where minorities, unmarried women, and young voters turn out. So right now, given that the electorate's in the GOP's favor, this is a good time to pass the torch in many of these seats.
Well, why don't we take a look at some of the races, and we'll move ironically from left to right. Let's begin in California, where Howard Buck McKeon is the outgoing chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. Buck there, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ford, I believe that's an Orange County district. What's the read on Buck's successor?
Well, the question's going to be is who winds up winning this, the primary. And the problem is in California, it's a top two system. But this, thanks to redistricting, is still a Republican-leaning district. So if you can get the right candidate in the door, guess what? The Republicans are going to hold this seat. I don't see a lot of gains and losses in 2014 in the House. We have a net 17. We could really go anywhere from a plus or minus 4-seat pickup to a 4-seat loss. The bigger concern for me would be California 31, which is Miller's seat, because that's a strong blue situation.
And you just mentioned Gary Miller. We got a glimpse of Gary, and there he is again on the screen. Gary, a guy who came to Congress from the construction industry, and you say it's going to be a challenge to hang on to that particular seat given the makeup of the district.
No, that's exactly right. Because of redistricting, it is what we call a D+5 district, which means that the Democrats really have a little bit of a turnout advantage there. But the good thing is if we are going to actually be able to catch up on this, this is the best time to do it because guess what? The great thing about Democratic voters is even though it's California, they're not conditioned to turn out in non-presidential elections.
Well, a surprise retirement we want to talk about next. We come back to the East Coast. The former offensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles, a Michigan standout during his college days, Big Jon Runyan, deciding to leave the Congress after only 2 terms. And even though that's across the state line, it's considered the Philly suburbs as he represents that part of South Jersey. So what's your take on Big Jon Runyan deciding to step down from Congress and the vulnerability of that seat in terms of the Democrats?
Well, it is about as well. Runyan should. It's unfortunate that he stepped down because he was a popular congressman, was doing a great job, particularly in an Arctic blue stronghold like New Jersey. But this is what we call an R+1 district, and essentially, if the Republican nominee can get the turnout, we should be able to hold on to that seat. And that's one of those seats that come 2016, when most likely Hillary Clinton's on the ticket, if we don't have an incumbent in that seat, we're not going to gain it until, say, 2018 when we have another midterm election.
And as we continue to take a look electorally, John, across the map, one of my old colleagues, he came in with me in the class of '94. He's risen in seniority, one of the close friends of Speaker Boehner. That would be, as I call him when I see him, that handsome Tom Latham of Iowa, in America's heartland. And it seems that there can be a real partisan fault line in a state like Iowa. With Tom Latham stepping down, your take on his district?
Well, that was a really big loss for Republicans because essentially this is a smack dab dead even district. And the best thing going for Republicans right now is that the generic ballot is tied. and that essentially President Obama's approval rating is so low in Iowa, and that really gives the Republicans an opportunity to pick this up. But again, a lot of these seats have crowded primaries, and the question is, does the most electable candidate on the Republican side arise from those primaries? If they do, we're going to hold a lot of these seats. What scares me, though, is I think Miller's seat might be toast in California.
Two other seats, East Coast, Jim Gerlach and Frank Wolf. Your take on their districts, especially at Virginia, which seems to be turning blue.
Well, you don't have, it depends here who wins the Republican primary in Virginia. But if Barbara Comstock wins the Republican primary, she's going to wind up succeeding Frank Wolf. And frankly, it's somebody who really knows the district. She's not a carpetbagger, and she's also a woman. It helps us put a fresh face on the Republican Party in a state that I agree with you in the presidential elections is starting to hue blue.
All right, we've talked about the need for fresh faces. The polling data suggests that, so that might be a bigger than +1 victory for the Republican Party if Comstock does win that race. Let's move on real quickly. I want to talk about the Nate Silver prediction here, and it's ruffled a lot of feathers. Democrats are furious because he's predicted that they are, in fact, going to lose control of the Senate in 2014. But of course, there's also this issue of the Democrats now using this to help fundraising, and they were able to defeat the Republicans in fundraising. But do you think that Democrats should be more concerned about what this really is going to mean for the future as opposed to how they can use it for their fundraising efforts?
Well, exactly. What does it mean in November? And obviously, Nate Silver's made some projections. Here's what really chaps Democrats. Because of Nate Silver's statistical prowess in correctly predicting the 2008 and 2012 presidential elections, among the MSNBC liberal donor crowd, he has near godlike stature. And frankly, gentlemen, it's because he's out there saying, hey, Democrats, guess what? You could actually lose the Senate in 2016. He really has a lot of liberal donors worried. And it's one of these things that Democrats are trying to fundraise off of it to get more money to really play in there. And obviously, the atmospherics can change, but this is something that really has Democrats scared. So scared such that when Guy Cecil, was the head of the Democratic Senatorial Committee, went out there and tried to launch this fundraising off of it, Nate Silver actually wrote a letter back to him on his blog saying, gentlemen, you got to live by the statistician and die by the statistician. You can't have it both ways. You better prepare for a rough 2014.
Wow. Interesting to see that kind of proactive stance by the statistician. And Ford, it's always great to have you along. Thanks for that in-depth coverage of what's going to transpire in the House and the Senate in terms of the midterms.
Yes, it is,
Thanks,
Ford. We'll have you back soon and look forward to talking to you the next time around here on America's Forum. Well, it's going to be interesting, JD. Nate Silver is just such a juggernaut now when it comes to this stuff. Everybody focuses on this stuff. Stats are stats.
Stats are stats. Polls are polls. And there have been different people who have favor and some who don't. We'd love your reaction. Tweet us at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum. Visit us at Facebook.com/Newsmax. Send us your email comments.